Oh, welcome back, Miss Heather Maio.
Hi, thank you for having me again.
We're gonna try this again. I feel good about it. I
Thank
feel
you.
confident in the
Mhm.
universe supporting our hopes and dreams of being people who record podcasts because I showered and I think you might have too.
I did. We showered. Our hair is presentable. We are doing it today.
I got dressed, I got ready, I'm like committed.
Yes, fully.
So how have you been? What's
I've
new?
been well. I've been well. I've been, motoring along, getting ready to make it to April. April, I'm done with school in April, so I feel like my life is going to kind of open back up, which also scares the shit out of me because what am I going to do now? But we'll get there. We'll get there. We feel good. What about you?
I think that like when you end something that you've been putting a ton of focus and energy on, that it always feels like, what am I doing? Like there's just that I actually think there is like a chemical response like when you reach an event and then that like low that you have after an event of like whether if it's you're graduating or you're looking forward
Yeah.
to a wedding or like any of those big events in your life, I think that when you like peak at them and then you come back down, there's always that like, what the fuck am I doing? Was that the right move? Like
And I think I'm already there because I'm just mentally over it, right? I have 2 weeks left. I am just no, I'm kind of checked out in the whole
yeah.
process in a good way, not a bad way, but I'm like, okay, now what? now, now what? And I'm just not really feeling really pulled to, aside from the gym, obviously I'm going to be at the gym more. And so that's exciting and that's good. But I know there's something else there. I just don't know what it is yet.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think it's exciting though. And this is like such a great time when you're in that transition phase to think about, okay, how do I hand this back over to trust the universe, to be clear in my intentions of inviting the universe is. I think that when we get into that space where we're trying to transition, we put a lot of stress and pressure on ourselves to like figure it out. And I think that when we're trying so hard to figure it out, we block off a lot of the opportunities and a lot of the support from the universe to come back in and like make it easy for you.
Right. And I mean, the whole reason I went back to school, I say this in utter seriousness. It sounds like a joke, but God told me to while I was cleaning my stove. Like it was the clearest message I've ever heard in my entire life. And it was like things just happened so beautifully and quickly after that, where it was clearly, I was being helped, I was being guided, I was being supported. And the process, which should have taken me 4 years, took me like 25 months. Like it's literally been like a lot easier than it should have been.
Yeah.
But and so I know that I'm like, okay, I'm divinely supported, but also when's my next message coming in? So, I'm kind of being like greedy with it. I'm like, wait, Heather, maybe just clean the stove again and see what happens.
It is like that. I've actually been thinking a ton about. So you're in my energy, must be. But I've been thinking a ton about like that flow and feminine energy versus that masculine energy, and how do we like switch back and forth between taking action and being the person to like call the shots and do the things, and then being a person to just exist, be, and receive.
Right.
Because
And I think
that's hard.
it is. And truthfully, at this point of my life, it is easier for me to be in that masculine energy. That's a space, I feel more comfortable in. So it's kind of, yeah, it's just weird to be confidently stepping back and wondering, kind of, okay, well, what is next? And not in a greedy way, because I have my coaching practice, I have the gym, there's enough there, but I
Yeah.
also know there's something else. And so it's just kind of like, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's like I want to break that down just like a little bit because I
Mhm.
think that the whole feminine versus masculine thing, like I used to be so turned off by that whole thing of like, oh, you have to be in your feminine energy and you have to be in your masculine energy. And I was like, what does that even mean? I don't want anything to do with it. But like just to break it down for people, like feminine energy is the ability to flow with what's showing up. It's the ability to be in your present in your person, being in your emotions, being that creative energy, that flow energy. And the masculine energy is really just more of a take charge, intentional, like move forward energy. And both are required for success in my opinion. But I think that for a really long time, I was in just the feminine energy 100% of the time. I'm in my emotions. I'm in my feminine flow energy, but I never was getting stuff done. So this year I've been really intentional because feminine energy is way more natural to me. And I think that's like important to differentiate, is that some people have more of that take charge energy and get stuff done energy. A lot of generators, specifically if we're talking human design. But for me, it was like, I do really well when I flow, but I don't complete things and I don't necessarily take action on certain things. And so it's a really hard space for me to like, I have to be really conscious to be like, no, you're going to ask for what you want and you're going to get this done today. And you're going to be, you know, more productive in certain ways. But I have to like push myself to be in that. And so maybe being in that masculine energy for school and stuff like that, maybe it's a good time for you to kind of come back into that. Okay, so what am I going to do to flow? And like, how am I going to incorporate that more, or what practices inspire that in me so that I can be more in flow in my life?
Yeah, no, totally. And that's what I'm like intuitively craving, where I just want to just chill. I want to chill the fuck out. And that's kind of not, don't get me wrong, I'm a very lazy person by nature. And I say that in 100% seriousness.
Yeah.
Like, come Friday afternoon at 2:00, I ain't getting shit done until Monday morning. Like, it's
100%.
just, but you know what I mean? But I can turn it back on Monday morning, and no, come Friday, I'm not doing shit until whatever. But I'm looking forward to a period of like a little bit less structure and less routine, which is odd for me because I'm typically somebody who thrives in structure and in routine. And so I'm excited to just kind of see, like you said, to see what happens and what kind of shows up and what the universe invites in with me if I can allow it to do so, because that's my bullshit. I just am like, okay, what's next? Like, no. I know I need to chill out for a little bit.
It's hard to know though. It's hard to know. And it's hard to actually, I think that we program ourselves when we're in that mode too much, or we're in that mode, like as our base energy, that when we're in that space where we're going, it's really hard to, like, our cells are buzzing because it needs the amount of energy to produce the productivity that we're creating for ourselves. So I think it's really challenging when we've been in that mode for so long. It's like our cells will be kind of like reaching for stuff, even if we're trying and being cognizant to chill out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure. Because it doesn't feel like chilling out in that state. It feels like laziness. And so it's like reminding, like, no, this is also productive too, at least for me. And so it's, yeah, I'm in that, trying to find that balance right now.
One of the things that like somebody had asked me on my Instagram story, I had like a Q&A up yesterday because I was traveling, and it just made me think of what you were talking about. And you were talking about like, I was cleaning the oven and got this strong intuitive knowing that I needed to go back to school. And so somebody had asked me like, what is the difference between intuitive knowing and wishful thinking?
I saw that.
And so like, I'm curious, like on your end, like how do you know God versus like hopefulness, or how do you know God versus like wishful thinking?
Yeah. So for me, it's kind of, and I was listening to your podcast yesterday and again this morning, and how you said you asked the girl, was it Liddy,
Logan. Mm-hmm.
Logan, you asked her, like, where do you feel this statement? Do you feel the lie of this statement in your belly? Like, where, that knowing. And so for me too, it's a very physical feeling. That experience, I will say, was different than anything else I've ever experienced. Like, I can tell you where it came from. It came from the side of my head. It went into my head. Like, it was a very weird, for lack of a better term, like transcendent, like, I have to do this. And not only do I have to do this, but it's already done. Like, it's written in my contract. It's already done. And it's for a reason. Like, it's going to do something for a reason. And I just knew it all. Like, right that moment, my husband was talking to my mother-in-law. She laughed, and I turned to him. I was like, dude, I don't know why or what, but I'm going to go back to school in January. And mind you, it was like December 28th. And he was like, okay, well, that's pretty soon, but like, let's see, and it just, everything just went. So like, for that, it was like, I knew. However, I feel like I was able to take that experience as what it was instead of questioning it, because of me getting curious about intuition versus anxiety before that. You know what I mean? I don't think I would have listened to that voice had I not been in that place in my journey, for lack of a better term. And so where I feel it, like you said, if it's something where it's more worry based or fear based or ego based, it is going to be more in my belly. Like,
Yeah.
it's more in my belly. Whereas, and this is weird for me. I'll say this to Christy a lot. And when I go see her for Reiki sessions, like it moves up just a little bit in like anxiety, but in a good way, like productive anxiety. Not that anxiety is ever productive, but you know what, like excitement.
Yeah.
That I'll feel literally in my chest, where if I feel something in my chest, I know, okay, this is productive. This is showing me something I am excited about. And I might be viewing it kind of as anxiety right now, but this is actually excitement. And it might make me nervous. It might challenge me, but it's excitement. And so I know for me, if I feel something in my chest, it's usually it is what I should be going for, versus like in my belly, that like sick kind of anxious feeling. That's something I need to turn away from. And again, I know this sounds weird, but I know it won't sound weird to you. I get my best hits when I'm doing cardio, when I'm just doing steady state cardio.
Yep.
I feel very open. My crown is very open. I set the intention before I get on that cardio almost every single time, like, okay, give me some ideas. I would love to hear what to God, but I would love to hear what you have to say. And it literally comes down through my head. Like I just will hear something and I'll feel something. And I've gotten some cool hits from that one, like that. Christy and I do this meeting with girls, and like that was a cardio hit for me. It just like came in my head, and I sent her a text right then and there, and she was like, shut up, I just had an idea that was very similar. I was like, oh,
yeah.
Okay. Like,
yeah. I think it's hard because intuition is tricky to learn when you've spent your life like shoving it aside, because intuition doesn't have logical reasoning. And so it's hard when you're like, well, wait, why would I go back to school? I've got all these things going for me. That'd be a lot of money and a lot of time, and I've got kids. And intuition has no real reason. And then you can come up with a million excuses of why you can't. So the more in touch with yourself that you are, the easier it is to hear your intuition and know it's your intuition. Because when people are like, oh, well, how do I know it's my intuition? And like, for me, I'm just like, you just like,
No.
when it's but for somebody just learning it, what I would say to you is that the quieter you can get within yourself, practice meditating, practice just walking and being present in your walk. When you're present within yourself, you can hear the difference between a knowing and just a really great thought. And the thought usually has a trail leading to it. So your thought might be, oh man, I really would love to progress more in my life. And I wonder, I could see myself going back to school. Wishful thinking has a trail of thoughts leading up to it, and it feels like it was created instead of received. Like intuition, if I could use one word to describe intuition, it's received. And you're usually, most of the time, not always, but for people just learning their intuition, one of the best ways to get your intuition is when you're doing something that you don't have to think too hard about. So driving, showering, cardio. What that means is that your energy and your brain is in a different frequency. And I forget the frequency. I want to say theta, but don't quote me on that. But when you're in a different frequency in your brain, you are like a magnet for your intuition. So meditation does that, obviously, but also just mundane things. Like people who have shower thoughts, like that's a thing I saw trending on like TikTok or whatever. Shower thoughts are probably somewhat intuition, or your brain starting to open to receive. So when you're in a mode of reception, that like when it pops in out of nowhere and there was no real reason for you to be thinking about it, that's definitely how you know it's intuition.
Right. And it was like, and I love that you said this, because I would have logically wanted to explain it out in another version of my life. I would have wanted to do all of those things. I don't need to. My life is fine. I've been doing fine without it, which fine is fucked if you want my honest opinion. We don't want to go for fine anyway, but you know what I mean? But I would have done that whole thing. And like you said, it was not even on my plane of something I even wanted to do, because I didn't want to do it. I still don't want to do it. I'm almost done with it. Pain in my ass. You know what I mean? But it was that knowing of, it's already done. Like, and I feel like for like, and so is that to say that for me, at least my experience, does that mean I don't have feelings of anxiety in quotes if somebody isn't watching this? I do get those feelings, but I need to remind myself that, fear feels a lot like excitement when we are able to actually tap into what we are going for. And so it's just like the same people like, oh, I'm scared to get on stage fright. I used to perform, and it's like reminding myself, am I scared or am I really excited to do this? Because those frequencies for me are one and the same. And it's just getting myself to think about it in that different way. Where if it's intuition, it's easier for me to stay in that, like, this is exciting. This might push me. This might bend me. This might stretch me. All of things which, might cause some discomfort, but those are good discomforts. I can lean into that one.
Yeah. I also think that so my experience with intuition and the way I teach it is that the initial hit, we talk about hit, right? The initial download of information, the initial idea, that aha moment doesn't usually feel like anything.
No.
So that's like the cool part, is that it's actually like calm, neutral, or a knowing energy rather than like, oh my God, I think I could go back to school. That feels really overwhelming. It's usually fine. And then you start thinking about why it doesn't
And
work,
then,
why it can't. And then you can get that anxiety or that knowing, or that, not that knowing, but the anxiety or the worry about it.
yes. And I love that you said that, because that's important for folks who are new to this to remember, because we will talk ourselves out of it. Intuition doesn't mean like I said it's already done. I knew that, but I could think of 1,000 reasons why I shouldn't have done it. But like you said, when that thought came in, it was just, I know people who understand this are going to know what I mean, but it was just put in my head. It was just, there was no emotion attached to it. You're right. Until I started looking at like, oh God, my schedule. Oh God, the gym. Oh God, like then the bullshit starts creeping in. But the initial thought, yeah, it's a seed. There's nothing. Yeah.
So one of my favorite, I was just thinking about this. One of my favorite books is Big Magic, by Elizabeth Gilbert. Have you read that one?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So, there's two things that you can do when you receive intuition, right? You can honor it like you did and say, okay, what am I going to do? Show me the quickest, easiest way to do this. Show me how good it can get. That's actually one of my favorite affirmations. Show me how good it can get. And you invite in like the step-by-step instructions of like, what's next? Okay. So how are you going to have me do this? So you can follow through, or you can get too scared. You can talk yourself out of it. Intuition is a guidance system, but it's not going to ever like twist your arm and force you to follow through with any of it. So what happens to intuition that's unfulfilled? If you have an intuition about like a relationship or a job, you usually find out the hard way that that wasn't quite the right fit. But one of the things that she talks about in Big Magic is the idea actually gets sent to somebody else. So she had talked about writing this book, or having this idea for this very specific idea for this book. And she ended up kind of in chaos in her personal life, and she didn't pursue or finish this book. And she ended up picking up a book a year and a half later, written by somebody else, that was the same exact, almost down to the detail of it. And so she poses the idea that intuition unfulfilled goes to another person. So if you have a big ass idea and it feels really good and it feels really aligned for you, this is your sign to fulfill it, to ask that question of like, show me how good it can get. Show me the path to this. What is the easiest way to get from point A to point B? Because I believe that the universe does show up for us in those ways. I believe that the universe puts things on our path and creates a way for us to fulfill the things that it puts on our heart. But when we are too scared, or we don't do it, or we talk ourselves out of it because we don't have proper evidence, or we come up with all the fears, that we actually miss our opportunity for greatness.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I believe, it's my experience personally. Like you said, not only will it be better than we imagine, but the process will unfold easier. And I hate to use that term, because that doesn't mean that things won't have roadblocks. And then it doesn't mean like, oh, this was wrong, that wasn't my intuition. No. Like life, right? But if we allow ourselves to lean into it, it's my belief we're going to be divinely supported through the process because we get even more rewarded. Like, people want to be listened to when they're spoken. I feel like God probably has the same, Now, I
Yeah.
don't think God has an ego, but I think he wants to be listened to when things like that are given.
Yeah. I just think it's just interesting, like the process of like developing your intuition and listening to it and learning to listen to it. And I think you brought up a great point that just because you're following through with it doesn't mean that you're not going to hit roadblocks. So one of my favorite like tools to combat that, because it's easy to be like, oh, I'm hitting this roadblock. Maybe I'm not supposed to do this. Maybe this is just not for me, not my calling. Maybe I made that up. Maybe it was wishful thinking and not intuition. I love to write intuition down. I love to write like how I was feeling, what that thought was, how that felt coming through, of like a knowing of like, we've had a conversation recently about how I had a connection with somebody and felt like called to work with them. And there were roadblocks that came up in that connection, but still a deep knowing that I'm supposed to work with that person. So the roadblocks that came up for me, and I think is true for a lot of people, are the fears I had around my worth in doing that. So I think that when you have intuition, it doesn't mean you're suddenly relieved of the fears and the things that hold you back and the old stuff that you maybe have developed about yourself as a belief. Like I think all of that stuff is still actively present. But when the roadblocks hit, you get a chance to come back to that intuitive space, which is why I love writing it down and say, you know what? I just felt to the fucking core of me this was the next right move. And look at all these things that happened that opened up. So I know that this roadblock means that I'm supposed to address the fact that I feel like I'm worth doing this thing for. I'm worth spending the money on going back to school. I'm worth pushing a little harder for. And I think it's really like those roadblocks are more of a mirror reflection of the things you're worried about rather than a stop sign that you're no longer supposed to go in this direction.
I agree 100%. It's like a shining light to our bullshit that may have prevented us from doing similar things in the past,
Absolutely.
like I was a person who I never finish anything. Like, hi, drop out the first time, like
Yeah.
so it was like me having to confront those fears of, am I actually going to follow through this time? Am I someone who finishes what, like, yeah, you're right. It just, which is kind of like, I can see where somebody listening might be like, well, that's kind of a fucked up thing to do to make us that uncomfortable and face our shit. But it's also like an incredibly kind thing to do, because then it means next time around we can be reminded of those lessons of, oh, I am worth this. I am worth this investment.
Yeah.
I am worth the time that this is going to take out of whatever. Yeah, I agree. It all happens. Things that are coming up there are probably coming up for a reason in our growth, is my belief.
And I think it's important to come back to that initial intuition of no, I'm meant to go this. And then what I love to do, because obviously it's so fucking easy to get in your own way. And it's so easy to cave to that fear of like, well, maybe I'm not good enough to do that. Maybe that is wishful thinking to think that I'm good enough to do that. And I think it's easy to get in that fear energy where you're trapping yourself into believing old stories and then limiting. So I like to come back with, if this is the right path for me, show me a way. If you can get out of your own head for 5 seconds, come back to the idea that no, I felt very strongly about this, and then invite the universe in to help you, 9 times out of 10, like you'll see evidence by the end of the day. You'll feel a specific way. You'll have more intuition energy. We really, really, really underestimate how magical and how quickly the universe can turn our bullshit around just by us being like, hey, looking a little help here. Can you fix this?
Well, and like we talked about last time, and like you talked about like 4 podcasts back, it's in the least, it's turning up our vibration a little. We've gotten in the proverbial elevator and, gotten out of like the, oh, I'm stuck vibe into the, okay, I'm stuck, but I'm going to take the next floor up. I'm feeling a little challenged, but I'm looking for possibilities. Like that's in a completely different, like, I'm done, this is over, versus Like, okay, there is a challenge in my way. I am willing to see where this challenge is going to lead me. That's completely different. That is a completely different energy. I mean, that would be the same as like we're lost in our car and just like decided to pull over on the side of the road and live there. We would never do that. We would look for other options. This is something I see in my own coaching, with food. We tend to interact with ourselves really, really differently than we would interact with any other situation. And so in any other situation in our lives, when we're challenged, when we are stuck, literally, I am lost. I am somebody who gets lost all the time, raising my hand. That is me. I would never just sit there on the side of the road and just be, okay, this is where I am. This is where I live now. I am stuck. No, I look for other options. We don't do that with situations in our lives where we feel like we've been prevented with a roadblock or something got in our way or something's a little more difficult or a little more challenging. We tend to just say, okay, well, this is it. This is too hard versus saying, okay, well, what can I do here? How can I make this easier? What can I do to change this situation? How can I interact with myself, with my boss, with my kid, with whatever the situation be? How can I switch this around instead of just literally staying on the side of the road and not fucking moving? Like, it's crazy when we think about it in other situations, but it's the same, like, oh, I ate a brownie, might as well eat the whole pizza. It's the same thing. It's like, no, we would never do that. We would never pop our tire on accident and then go slash the other three because they're
Right.
already popped. Like,
Yeah.
we need to remember, like, just because something might have quote unquote gone bad, it doesn't mean we need to ruin the whole thing. We
Yeah.
just need to stop, take a beat, take stock of the situation. Okay, now what can I do? And move on. Let it be that simple.
Well, and one of the things I think about is like if I'm lost on the side of the road, what I'm going to consult with is my GPS. And if we're talking about intuition, I
Yes.
mean, that is literally your soul's GPS. And I also like to think of the idea that somebody, if we're thinking about the soul GPS and the soul as a GPS, then we know that if we're trying to get from point A to point B and we pull off and take a bathroom break or go to like Taco Bell or whatever, like if we pull off the side of the road and we go off the exit and we stop there for 25 minutes, that doesn't mean that our GPS stops working and that we don't know how to get back to our route and get back on the highway. Like our soul is guiding us no matter how many wrong turns we took. It will still redirect you if you can come back in long enough to listen to it.
Yes, absolutely. It's just like you said, we got to take a beat. We got to take a break instead of just going, oh, fuck it. It's over. Ruined.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this conversation because intuition, some people like just make it this mystical thing and this special thing, and it's fucking not. I don't mean to like say it's not special because I think it's like literally how the universe helps guide us, how our higher selves help guide us. But at the end of the day, it's quite fucking easy. And it really just comes down to bringing your energy back inward. And I made this TikTok over the weekend and I was like, listen, ask less, ask people for advice less. If there's like a therapist who can walk you through it and sit there in a neutral way, awesome. But if somebody is like, if you've got your parent hanging over you and you're like, hey, what do I do? Do I go back to school or do it, and they're like, oh God, school's just a lot of money. Like, what are you even going to do with your degree? People have good intentions, but they give advice typically from a place of fear or shit that didn't work out for them. And the thing is you're not them. Your path isn't them. And your best way to figure out what is right and wrong for you is to come back in and ask yourself, is this right or wrong for me? To sit with it, to hand it over. Okay, if this is right, then I need you to show me a pathway to get there.
Yes.
Every
Yeah.
time it works. But when you start getting convoluted with the fears and thoughts of other people, it makes it really hard to hear the volume on your GPS.
Right. And these can be, the people we love, and they very well could have our best interest at heart, but it's also scary for them to see somebody taking big leaps because it can also shine a light on the big leaps they're not taking, which makes it even harder for them to say, yeah, go chase your dream if maybe they're not chasing their own. And so, it's not coming from a malicious place, but it's coming from a place of, well, this makes me uncomfortable because I'm not doing this. And so, it's just, the old maxim, like, don't take advice from people who aren't at where you're
Yep.
going. I think this definitely applies there, but I'm still in full agreement with you. We need to learn to listen to ourselves if we're ever going to tap into our intuition. And that means, again, my world's nutrition. How many times do we go to other people for give me diet advice, give me diet advice? It's great. It's needed to a point, but at some point we have to say, okay, how does this feel for me? Right? Like, because what worked for somebody isn't always going to work for somebody else. What a beautiful thing. There's so many different ways to do things in life. So we always need to be able to come back to, they might be an expert. That might be a therapist. That might be somebody who has everything we want and desire. How beautiful, how wonderful, we know it's available to us. But still, what is my path? What is this going to look like for me?
And you can tell by how it feels, because at
Mhm.
just for example, I had this plan in my head of how I felt called to do things, and how I believed that things intuitively can happen for me in certain parts of my career. And so I consulted with somebody, and I was like, oh, this person, has done this a little bit more recently than I have. And I really want that, feedback. And the entire conversation was so fear-based and negative. And I got off the phone and I'm like, shit, maybe I'm wrong. Like, maybe that isn't the way to go. And they had such a bad experience. And by the end of the night, I just came back to the idea of like, no, that does not have to go that way for me. That doesn't feel true for me. I actually feel like this is going to work out for me. And I feel really strongly about that. And I have to come back to my own feelings on it, rather than just accepting other people's fears as my truth and shying away from my intuition because somebody else didn't have that work out for them.
Right,
And
right.
it's hard. It's
It is.
hard.
And we're just trying to keep ourselves safe, right? Like at the end of the day, we're animals running from tigers, like
Yeah.
we want to keep ourselves safe. So it makes sense. We're not doing anything wrong by questioning that intuition, but still it's our responsibility, I feel like, to ourselves to just honor, if we feel, and I think that's how it starts, right? Because that's a question I'm sure you must get a lot. Well, in the beginning, what does it feel like? Well, it feels like a knowing
Yeah.
that, yeah, you're going to question, you're going to say, nope, that wasn't it. That wasn't it. That wasn't it. Like, but the more you can kind of like lean in, I love your idea of writing it down. Like, just what did that feel like? What happened? Like getting more familiar with that. It makes it easier to kind of tune out the proverbial tigers that may or may not be lurking around there. And let's be real, most of the time they're not. It's just our fear trying to keep us
Right.
safe, but it's also keeping us small.
Yes, it's also keeping us small. I just want to like emphasize that.
Mhm.
People ask me a lot, like, how do I grow my intuition? And I could give you a bunch of like tools, right? I could give you like, how do I grow my clairvoyance and how do I trust my knowing, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, my best tip for you is to get really involved with knowing the universe, to get really connected, to create a practice for yourself. Like one of the things that I do for myself that I've done on and off over the years, but this is just really resonating. It always does. I love the Course in Miracles. My favorite morning practice I have, because when I read that text, I'm like, yeah, the universe exists. And before that, I would listen to like Wayne Dyer or I don't know, Eckhart Tolle, or I would listen to something that felt inherently true to me. And
Mhm.
that's like the big part, right? Is it has to feel inherent, like God, that makes just reaches a part of me that I don't even logically know why it makes sense or resonates with me, but it's just reaching somewhere in me that is like a hell yes. So finding something that resonates with you, whether it's a YouTube video, whether it's a meditation practice, whether it's the Bible, whether it's a book that just like hits right, finding something that plugs you into the idea of the universe every day will increase your intuition 100-fold. You will start to be like, oh, I'm like, it's not just me and it's not just my thoughts and it's not just my fears. It's actually this entire fucking thing. It's this entire fucking planet that's floating around in the middle of this big galaxy. And that's so silly and ridiculous. And if we stop to take like 5 seconds to consider how silly and ridiculous it is, we can get out of our own paradigm that we've created out of fear and like the structures of fear and how we're processing things on such a small, tiny little scale, that we can go, oh shit, I'm part of something bigger. And when we have that, oh shit, I'm part of something bigger moment, it's like lightning rods. Like, yes, she's listening. She's available for information. And I swear that the universe is like the Sims when they have like the blue light over their head. Like that's how people who are open to hearing start to experience things.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I agree. We don't let ourselves geek out on the wonder of it all. I feel like enough, like we don't let ourselves like just get caught up like looking at the trees and how fucking wild is it that we have these things that grow and like, you know what I mean? Like just geek out on the awe around us. Yeah, it's pretty fucking cool if we can tap into that.
That's like why I love sunsets and sunrises and the moon. And like, I love to hike and just see really, really crazy views. Cause there's nothing about a crazy view that you can be like, yeah, that's normal. Like, man created that. Like, there's something beyond man that created that. And again, it's just that deep seated knowing, it's that soul recognition. I think it's Marianne Williamson. She has like a whole video on just soul level recognition. Like when you're told truth, like your soul just knows that's correct for you. And that's going to look correct for everybody based on how you got brought up and what what your parents said and did and what churches you might have gone to or spiritual things you were exposed to or trauma from spirituality, which definitely a lot of people have. So your truth may look different and that's okay. It doesn't have to match Heather and I's truth about how intuition works. You have to really listen to yourself. And that's like one of the things that takes spirituality from being an idea to being a personal, just a way of viewing it personally, because I think that spirituality in other ways can be toxic if we're saying this is how you do it. And there's part of you that's like, no, it's not, but I'm going to do it anyway, because these people who have been doing it for a while told me it's the right way. Like you have to really, part of getting to know yourself is getting to know the truths that work for you and the ways and things that work for you. And nobody else has a say in that.
Yeah. And, it's not to say don't try things on, right? Try it
Right.
on, see how it feels. But yeah, it's not going to. There was a period in my life where I literally couldn't pray with my hands together because it gave me icky vibes. I was like raised in a Catholic church with, whatever, but it just wasn't for me. It didn't feel right. I never felt holy. I never felt aligned in that space. And so I literally could not touch my hands and talk to God. It never felt good to me. And so, but somebody else, they would be like, well, how could that's such a silly thing. Well, who does that need to make sense to? It doesn't matter. Does that mean I couldn't talk to God? Well, for a while I felt I couldn't talk to God. I needed to learn how to redo that again, how to find a practice that worked for me and reconnect in that and not make it make sense. And I still look, I mean, and I'm sure people get it too. Like my parents and my grandmother, like they'll come home and be like, that's a pretty rock, like my crystals or whatever. And I'm like, and it's fine. But like my husband, he's like, well, why don't you ever take the boys to church? I'm like, you can take them. I don't
Yeah.
connect there. That's not where I talk to God, but they are, they go to Catholic school, Christ. What else? It's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, all that to say, we need to find something with it. And again, that's intuition, right? It's our internal GPS. It's our internal process. And it's figuring out a way. How can I, for me, help me? I need to honor myself. Me honoring myself is a way to honor God. What does that look like? That helps me deepen my intuition because when my vessel, my body is clear and in alignment, my intuition is better. Like, and so it's like finding all of those things down to the practical level of, I want to make sure I'm getting enough sleep because I'm not going to hear my intuition if I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
Like things, very, very practical things that anybody can do. I want to make sure I'm nourishing myself. I want to make sure I'm, eating enough. I want to make sure I'm not eating too much shit. Like all these things are what I feel like are kind of universally true for us as humans, but of course they're all going to look different on each individual person in their body and in their process.
I love that you just brought up the idea of like, for you, like putting your hands together to pray felt super just not correct.
It felt horrible, honestly.
So, I think I talked about this a little bit in a different podcast, but for a very long time, I would have considered myself an atheist, which is hilarious now because I teach intuition and encourage people to connect to the universe. So like, I'm not coming at this from like somebody who's been spiritual my entire life. I have not. I had to have the universe prove itself to me. I needed evidence, I needed proof, and it did, but the word God, no, would not have been in my vocabulary even 5 years ago, to be honest. That one took me a while to come around to until I accepted that it was part of what I consider the universe. And it, for me, I know this is going to sound really strange, but for me, the word God actually has different energy than the word universe. And so when I like do manifesting, I write God, angels, universe, and forces of my highest good. And I just include all of it because I don't know which one's going to, answer the call or help me out, or which one I'm co-conspirating. But I just want to honor all the possibility of what I feel like could be right for me. And so sometimes, even still, I don't know. I don't know what that is. There are days where like God, angels, universe, like, I don't know if that's correct. I don't know if I resonate with that. And it's day to day, and that's okay. And so whatever works for you, what terms resonate with you, what practices resonate with you. And like, if anything you hear from us today, I just want you to know that intuition is deeply personal, and it will look different as you continue and go on with your life. It will show up differently. It will show up more profoundly sometimes. It will show up quieter sometimes, and it never goes away. No matter how far away you get from yourself, it does not disappear. You are always being guided. And sometimes you just have to take 5 minutes to turn off everything chaotic and just tune back in, and you have access to it all over again.
Yeah, I agree. And especially right now in this day and age, right? I don't want to sound like one of those old people who's like, well, now, but it's true. It's like we're so plugged in, but to everything else, right? We're so, beautifully connected to each other because we have these devices we carry around that allow us to do so, but it's also kind of toxic and online. And so like, so just taking that time, like you said, to just connect with ourselves, which meditation, I understand sounds very scary for a lot of people, but like you said, go on a walk. Like it just something to give ourselves, or even, shower thoughts. They're real. They're trending for a reason. Like, give yourself an opportunity to be quiet every single day. Even that little change, I feel like, starts making a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this conversation is going to serve a lot of people in just helping them see their intuition in a new light and how it's working for them, and just differentiating what is intuition and maybe what isn't. And so what I'll say is that, just as a quick recap, intuition is really random. It's not trailed by other thoughts. It's really random. And it usually feels quite good and centered when you think of it. And you may have anxious thoughts after, but that initial moment that feels like a yes, pay really close attention to write that down. Voice record yourself saying it so that you can come back to it when you follow through and things feel like they might be hitting a snag, or you might have to recalibrate. And don't forget to invite the universe in to help you out, because the universe wants to help you out. It wants to and has to be invited, because it can't control your life. It's not that. That's not what it's there for. We have free will, and we have the ability to, make choices for ourselves, and we can listen to other people or our ego or our fear, or we can listen to that deep knowing that we were put here for something really incredible, and we can start to follow how may we be a light in somebody else's life? How may we be full in ourselves so that carries over into sharing and showing love with other people? So try it. Let us know what you think. Let us know what like snags you come up against, or things or thoughts or feelings that you come up against, because I think if you're really coming back within, it's a lot easier to hear your intuition than you think it might be.
Agreed. Fully.
Where can people connect with you?
Instagram is really easy, or my website. So Instagram is just at Heather.Maio, Maio, not like the traditional way. And then my website is just Heather Maio, again, Maio.com. And everything lives right there.
Awesome. And you guys can connect with me, NicholeEaton.xo, on Instagram and TikTok, or my website, NicholeEaton.com. And I'm so grateful for all of our conversations. Hopefully this video works perfectly. And yeah,